When Sargent stepped through the front door after 18 months of deployment, he expected to hear his daughter's laughter echoing through the house. Instead, he found complete silence. What he discovered in the backyard pig pen would haunt him forever and ignite a fire of justice that would burn through an entire town. This soldier had survived 18 months in hell, leading men through impossible missions. A decorated sergeant who had faced enemy fire without flinching, but every step through that empty house was driven by one thing: the promise of holding his little girl again. For 547 days, he had carried her school photo in his chest pocket, missing front teeth, butterfly hair clips, that smile that could light up the darkest battlefield. His fellow soldiers knew him as unbreakable, but they also knew he turned down every promotion that would have kept him away from her longer. The small figure curled up in the filthy straw was barely recognizable as the bright-eyed child he had left behind. Her once golden hair hung in matted clumps around a face so thin that her cheekbones protruded sharply. What had once been a pink dress was now a rag, torn and stained beyond recognition. When she finally stirred at the sound of his footsteps, her reaction wasn't the joyful recognition he had dreamed of. Instead, she pressed herself deeper into the corner of the pen, her tiny body trembling with profound fear. Her eyes, those beautiful brown eyes that used to sparkle with mischief, now darted around like a trapped animal's. They held knowledge that no 6-year-old should possess, that adults could be monsters, that home could be hell. When she finally looked at him, there was no recognition at first, only terror. She had learned to expect pain from every human interaction. "Baby?" His voice cracked as he spoke, barely more than a whisper. "Baby, it's Daddy." The word seemed foreign on his tongue. How could he be her daddy when he hadn't been there to protect her? How could he claim that title when she was living like an animal in his absence? How could he call himself her father when he had failed so completely in the most basic responsibility of parenthood? At the sound of his voice, something flickered in her eyes. A spark of memory, perhaps, or hope. Her head tilted slightly, and for just a moment, he saw a glimpse of the child he remembered. But then fear crashed over her features again, and she shrank back, as if expecting punishment for daring to hope. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, 18 months wide. Her small hands clutched at the dirty straw beneath her, knuckles white with the effort of trying to disappear. When a pig snorted nearby, she didn't even flinch. She had grown accustomed to their presence, had learned to compete with them for scraps of food. 18 months ago, this same little girl had been the light of his world. Her bedroom had been a paradise of pink walls covered with her artwork, shelves lined with stuffed animals. Saturday mornings when she would crawl into his bed at dawn, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. "Daddy, tell me about the butterflies again," she would whisper. The deployment orders had come suddenly. 18 months, his commanding officer had said. Critical mission. He had wanted to refuse, but refusing would have meant court-martial, discharge, loss of benefits. His wife had seemed understanding. "We'll be fine," she had assured him. "You just focus on staying safe." He had trusted completely. His wife had been a loving mother, or so it seemed. The neighbors spoke well of her. She attended parent-teacher conferences, posted happy family photos on social media that made their life look picture-perfect. She had volunteered at school events, played the role of the devoted military wife with Oscar-worthy performance. But masks eventually slip, especially when there's no audience to perform for, and the woman he had trusted with his most precious gift had revealed her true nature once he was too far away to intervene. The transformation hadn't been gradual, it had been swift and cruel, like a switch being flipped from compassion to contempt in the span of a single day. It started with small cruelties. "Your daddy doesn't want you anymore," she would whisper when the child asked when he was coming home. "That's why he left. That's why he never calls." The lies were delivered with such conviction that a 6-year-old had no choice but to believe them. The bedtime stories stopped first, then the healthy meals, then the clean clothes. Each comfort was stripped away systematically, as if following some twisted manual for breaking a child's spirit. "You're not my daughter," became her favorite refrain. "You're just baggage he left behind, a burden I have to carry until he decides he wants you back, if he ever does." The child who had once been tucked into bed with kisses was now told to find her own place to sleep. When she curled up on the couch, she was dragged outside. Animals sleep outside, her stepmother explained with clinical coldness. And that's what you are now, an animal. What had begun as neglect had evolved into something far more sinister. The child who had once slept in a bed surrounded by stuffed animals was now expected to sleep among actual animals. The daughter who had been read bedtime stories was now screamed at for daring to ask for food. Mealtimes became punishment sessions. A bowl of pig slop was thrown on the ground, and she was expected to eat like the animals around her. No utensils, no plate, no dignity. When she tried to use her hands, they were slapped away. Animals don't use their hands, she was told. But the worst part wasn't the physical degradation. It was the psychological warfare. Every day brought new reminders that she was unwanted, unloved, and forgotten. Your daddy has a new family now, she was told. He doesn't even remember your name. The child began to believe it. She stopped crying because tears brought punishment. She stopped speaking because words brought pain. She learned to curl up in the corner of the pen, making herself as small as possible, hoping that if she just disappeared enough, the suffering would stop. But the real shocker was yet to come. The neighbors who had once praised her stepmother as a devoted parent now saw a different woman entirely when they thought no one was looking. The same hands that baked cookies for school fundraisers would strike a child for the crime of existing. The same voice that sang in the church choir would scream obscenities at a 6-year-old who dared to whimper from hunger. But the most sinister aspect of the abuse was how perfectly it was hidden from the outside world. When visitors came to the house, the child was locked away in the basement where no one could see her, where her muffled cries couldn't be heard over the sound of polite conversation. When neighbors asked about her, they were told elaborate stories about visits to relatives or sleepovers with friends, lies delivered with such convincing detail that no one thought to question them. The woman who was slowly, methodically destroying a child's soul maintained her reputation as a pillar of the community, a devoted wife supporting her deployed husband, a loving mother going above and beyond for a child who wasn't even her biological daughter. Some neighbors had begun to notice inconsistencies in the carefully constructed lies, small cracks in the perfect facade that raised uncomfortable questions. Mrs. Henderson next door realized she hadn't seen the little girl playing in the yard for months, hadn't heard her laughter drifting over the fence during those long summer afternoons when children should be outside enjoying their freedom. The mailman mentioned to his wife that he used to receive enthusiastic waves from the child every morning as she waited for the school bus, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd seen her bright face pressed against the window, waiting for his arrival. Thousands of miles away, something had begun to eat at the soldier's consciousness. The video calls had become less frequent, then stopped altogether. Letters from home dwindled to nothing. When he called, his wife's explanations seemed rehearsed and hollow. "She's sleeping," became the standard response. "She's at a friend's house," was another deflection. But the names were always different, and there was always an excuse why he couldn't call her there. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine call home. "She doesn't want to talk to you," his wife said with casual cruelty. "She's angry that you left. She says she doesn't have a daddy anymore." The words hit him like physical blows, each syllable a knife twisting in his chest. His daughter, his sweet, loving little girl who used to cry when he left for just a day of training, no longer wanted to speak to him. It didn't make sense. Nothing about the situation made sense anymore. That night, lying in his bunk in a war zone thousands of miles from home, he made a decision that would change everything. His commanding officer had always said to trust his instincts in the field. That gut feelings often meant the difference between life and death, and his gut was screaming that his daughter was in mortal danger. That voice on the phone, it had never been like that before, but he didn't know the worst yet. He began making inquiries through unofficial channels, reaching out to other military families in the area, calling in favors from friends stationed closer to home. What they reported back made his worst fears seem like pleasant dreams compared to the reality they uncovered. "The house looks abandoned," one friend told him during a secure call. "Windows are boarded up, yards overgrown with weeds. Neighbors say they haven't seen your wife or daughter in months. The whole place has this feeling of wrongness." Against military protocol and potential career suicide, He made the decision to return home immediately, regardless of the consequences. He applied for emergency leave, claiming a family crisis that required his immediate attention. When that was initially denied due to operational requirements, he went up the chain of command, making it clear that he would go AWOL if necessary to protect his daughter. His commanding officer, a father himself, recognized the desperation in his voice and the genuine fear that drove his request. 18 months is a long deployment, he said quietly, signing the emergency leave papers. Family emergencies happen. Go take care of your daughter, Sergeant. The mission will be here when you get back. The flight home felt endless. When he finally reached his house, the front door was unlocked, swinging freely in the breeze. Inside, the house was a monument to neglect and decay. He called out for his wife, for his daughter, but his voice echoed through empty rooms. It was only when he reached the kitchen that he heard the sounds, animal noises coming from the backyard. There, in the pig pen, was his daughter. She was curled up in the corner, sleeping on filthy straw, her clothes reduced to rags. Her hair was matted with dirt, her skin pale and marked with bruises that told a story of systematic abuse. The pigs around her seemed almost protective, as if they recognized a fellow victim. They had shared their space with her when the humans in her life had failed her completely. Standing there, staring at his daughter's broken form, the soldier felt something inside him die. His knees buckled, and he gripped the fence post to keep from falling. The scene in the pig pen was only the beginning. The reality was far more terrifying than he had realized at that moment. As he climbed over the fence, he began to notice more horrific details. There was no shelter. She had been exposed to the elements for months. There was no clean water. She had been drinking from the same trough as the animals. But worst of all were the chains. Heavy metal shackles around her ankle, attached to a post. She wasn't just living with the animals. She was being kept like one. When his shadow fell across her, she stirred, her body instinctively curling tighter. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on him with wariness. "Daddy?" The word was barely a whisper, but the hope in her voice, fragile and desperate, was unmistakable. "Yes, baby," he managed to say through his tears, his voice cracking on each word. "Daddy's here. Daddy's finally here." The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying in its completeness. The broken father cradling his traumatized daughter was replaced by the warrior who had survived 18 months of combat. But this time, the enemy wasn't hiding in some distant desert or behind enemy lines. The enemy was in his own home, wearing the face of someone he had once promised to love and honor until death do them part. His wife chose that exact moment to return from wherever she had been, probably shopping with the money from his military pay, while his daughter starved in chains. The sight of him kneeling in the pig pen, holding their daughter, sent her into immediate panic mode, as she realized that her carefully constructed world of lies was about to come crashing down around her. "You're home early," she said, as if his unexpected arrival was somehow the problem rather than the scene of systematic abuse he had discovered. "I can explain everything. She's been having behavioral problems, acting out, being defiant. I had to discipline her somehow." Her words were like gasoline thrown on a fire that was already threatening to consume everything in its path. He stood slowly, still holding his daughter protectively against his chest, and turned to face the woman who had systematically destroyed the most precious thing in his world. Discipline. His voice was deadly quiet, the kind of calm that experienced soldiers recognized as the moment before all hell broke loose. "You call this discipline? You call chaining a 6-year-old child in a pig pen discipline?" She tried to maintain her composure, to spin another elaborate lie that might somehow salvage the situation and preserve the fiction she had been living. She was being defiant, refusing to follow the simplest rules. "I tried everything else first. Timeouts, taking away privileges, even spanking, but she just wouldn't listen to reason. Sometimes children need firm boundaries, and this was the only thing that seemed to get through to her. Firm boundaries." He repeated her words as if they were spoken in a foreign language that he was struggling to understand. "Is that what you call chaining a 6-year-old child in a pig pen and leaving her there for months? Is that what you call starving her until she has to compete with animals for scraps of rotten food? Is that what you call your firm boundaries?" His daughter pressed closer to him, her small body trembling not with fear of him, but with relief at finally being held by someone who loved her, someone who would protect her from further harm. The way she clung to him, desperate and grateful and heartbreakingly trusting, told him everything he needed to know about what she had endured during his absence. "You don't understand what it's been like," his wife continued, backing away slowly as she recognized the dangerous look in his eyes. "She's not like other children. She's difficult, manipulative, always trying to get sympathy by making up stories about how badly she's treated. I had to be strict with her, had to show her that actions have consequences." The lies kept coming, each one more outrageous and infuriating than the last. She painted herself as the victim in this scenario, a woman struggling valiantly to manage a difficult child while her husband was away serving his country. She claimed that his daughter was disturbed, possibly mentally ill, certainly impossible to control through normal parenting methods. But he had seen the evidence with his own eyes. He had found his daughter chained in a pig pen like an animal, living in conditions that would be considered inhumane by any civilized standard. No amount of manipulation or creative storytelling could explain away what he had witnessed with his own eyes. "Get out," he said quietly, his voice carrying more menace than any shout could have conveyed. "Get out of this house right now, and don't ever come back." The confrontation that followed was swift and decisive, but it would be burned into his memory for the rest of his life. His wife's final desperate attempts at manipulation, her crocodile tears and false protestations of love for his daughter, only served to fuel his rage to even greater heights. When she finally dropped her mask completely and revealed the monster that had been hiding beneath, saying with shocking callousness, "She got what she deserved. She never belonged in this family anyway. She's not my child, and I never wanted her here." Any possibility of redemption or forgiveness died instantly and permanently. Over the following hours, as neighbors were contacted and authorities were called, the full scope of the abuse became horrifyingly clear. It hadn't just been neglect or even simple physical cruelty. It had been a deliberate, systematic campaign designed to destroy a child's spirit, to break her connection to the father who loved her, and to convince her that she was worthless and deserving of whatever punishment was inflicted upon her. The locked rooms in the house told their own devastating story. His daughter's beautiful bedroom, the pink paradise where they had spent countless hours reading stories and talking about her dreams, had been stripped bare and converted into storage space for his wife's shopping purchases, as if his daughter had never existed at all. Medical professionals who examined her documented malnutrition so severe that her growth had been permanently stunted. Untreated infections had been allowed to fester until they became life-threatening. Injuries that should have healed months ago were still fresh and painful because they had been repeatedly re-inflicted as punishment for imaginary transgressions. But perhaps most heartbreaking of all were the letters she had tried to write to him. Dozens of them, hidden in various places around the pig pen, where she thought they would be safe from discovery and destruction. Letters written on scraps of paper with makeshift pencils made from charcoal and mud, each one a desperate plea for rescue that never came. "Dear Daddy," one letter read in shaky 6-year-old handwriting. "I try to be good, but she says I'm bad. Are you mad at me? Is that why you don't call anymore? I miss you so much it hurts in my chest. Please come home soon. I promise I'll be better if you just come back." The investigation revealed that his wife had been systematically intercepting and destroying any attempt at communication between father and daughter, creating a web of lies that convinced his daughter she had been abandoned, while convincing him that she no longer wanted contact with him. The legal battle that followed was fierce, exhausting, and emotionally devastating for everyone involved. His wife's defense team employed every dirty trick in the book, attempting to minimize her culpability by painting her as an overwhelmed military spouse who had simply cracked under the pressure of single parenthood. They brought in expert witnesses who testified about the unique challenges faced by military families, the isolation and depression that could result from extended deployments, the difficulty of managing a household and raising children alone while worrying about a spouse in a war zone. But the evidence against her was overwhelming and undeniable. Photographs of the pig pen showed conditions that would have been condemned by animal welfare organizations. Video recordings that she had made, apparently for her own twisted entertainment, showed her forcing his daughter to eat from a pig trough while laughing at the child's distress. His own testimony, delivered with quiet dignity despite the tears streaming down his face, painted a picture of the loving child he had left behind and the broken spirit he had found upon his return. She used to laugh all the time, he told the jury, his voice steady despite his obvious pain. When I found her in that pig pen, I realized she had forgotten how to laugh. She had forgotten that she was allowed to be happy. The case became a catalyst for sweeping changes throughout their community and beyond. Parents who had previously minded their own business began paying closer attention to the children around them. Schools implemented comprehensive training programs for teachers and staff to recognize signs of abuse and neglect. The media coverage brought national attention to the unique vulnerabilities faced by military families, particularly children whose deployed parents couldn't provide direct oversight of their care. New programs were established to maintain regular contact with military families during deployments, with trained professionals making unannounced welfare checks. When the verdict finally came, it was swift and decisive. His wife was found guilty on all counts: aggravated child abuse, child endangerment, theft of military benefits, and a dozen other charges that carried a combined sentence of 25 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's words during sentencing resonated with everyone who had followed the case. The defendant was entrusted with the care of an innocent child and violated that trust in the most heinous way possible. She weaponized a father's love for his daughter, using his absence to inflict systematic torture on a helpless victim. But for the soldier, the real victory wasn't measured in years of imprisonment or legal vindication. The real victory was hearing his daughter giggle at a cartoon, watching her play with other children without fear, seeing her sleep peacefully in a real bed surrounded by stuffed animals, and the security of knowing she was finally safe. Recovery was neither quick nor easy. The child, who had learned to expect cruelty from every human interaction, needed time to remember what kindness felt like. Some days were harder than others. Nightmares that would wake her screaming, panic attacks triggered by unexpected sounds, moments when the trauma seemed too overwhelming to bear. But there were also miracles. The first genuine laugh, the first time she asked for a bedtime story, the first "I love you too, Daddy," spoken without fear or hesitation. Therapy sessions became sacred time, helping her process emotions she didn't have words for, while teaching him how to support her healing. Today, years after that horrific discovery in the pig pen, father and daughter have built a new life together, one founded on love, trust, and the unwavering commitment to never let darkness win again. She still has difficult days when the past reaches out to drag her backward, but they face those challenges together with the strength of survivors. This story is about the responsibility we all share to protect the innocent, to speak up when we suspect abuse, and to never assume that someone else will handle a situation that demands our intervention. It's about the power of a parent's love to overcome even the most devastating betrayal, and the incredible resilience of children who survive the unthinkable. Most importantly, it's about hope, because even in the darkest situations, even when evil seems to have won, love has the power to prevail. The soldier who returned from war learned that his greatest battle was not fought on foreign soil, but in his own backyard, and the victory he achieved was measured not in enemy casualties or territory gained, but in his daughter's ability to trust, to love, and to believe in a future free from fear. That victory belongs to all of us, and it reminds us that we must never stop fighting for the innocent, never stop believing in the power of love to heal, and never stop hoping that tomorrow can be better than today.